So moved.
A second?
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mike Talkett,
Yes.
David McDowell,
Yes.
Bridget McCandless,
Yes.
Anthony Jeremita,
Yes.
Les Boatright,
Yes.
Okay, reports, finance and administration.
Hello, Stephanie Harris. For those of you, I think I've only been here one time, so you should have your financial statements attached. Let me get to them, sorry. Okay, so 16.67% is kind of what we look at this time of the year. 2 months out of 12 is that percentage. So what we're looking for is our revenues above or below that mark for good, or our expenses above or below that mark for bad. So just in general, you guys are really looking pretty well. Transmission wheeling is a little low, and charges for services is a little low. Charges for services, I think, will even out throughout the year. Things are billed at different times. Again, you're looking at two months of the year skews some figures. If things happen one time a year, then if they're a revenue, it can make it look low. If they're an expense, they can make it look high. So again, just kind of looking to see is anything drastic, and then further analyze that and see if is this something we need to worry about. Transmission wheeling, I'll let Jim talk about it. I don't know much about transmission wheeling or why that would be low. Personnel services is under budget. Can be a good thing, can be a bad thing. So I'm guessing there's some positions that probably are still open, is kind of the city way right now. Again, nothing is extremely high right now. Other services is a little bit high. Most likely that is because there's some expenses in there that are annual expenses that were paid. Investment income somehow looks like it's killing it. I don't know how, because it's not my personal life, but that's great. And miscellaneous revenue is also over, but again, we're not talking big numbers. 54,000 is actual and only 15,700 was budgeted. So percentage looks really good, but as far as dollar amounts, not material. Other than that, I think if you guys have any questions, I will try to answer them. Just a little bit of where we are. Audit is currently underway. As you guys might remember, there are huge adjustments related to the audit usually that affect your ending balances for financial statements. So the biggest two of those are retirement loggers and OPEB, which is compensated absences, other post-employment benefits is what it means. So those are usually huge adjustments that happen as part of the audit. And we don't have those numbers yet because a lot of loggers' actuarial values don't come out until the very end of September, and we don't usually get our reports until we should be getting them anytime, mid to late October. So we will be able to make those entries and those adjustments, and comp absences, same thing. They have an actuarial value and they have to go. We're waiting always on those two things to come out before we can do our final audit entries. So we do have preliminary June financials, but again, solely preliminary where we are as of book right now. We've done some accrual entries all the accrual entries that we can related to year-end items. But like I said, there's big ones that we haven't been able to do yet. So I don't know if you have any questions or.
Anybody have any questions?
I have a couple. So for your preliminaries, understanding that they're preliminary, what do you show as our year-end profit or loss?
Your year-end income before transfers is 6.8 million. After transfers out for pilots to the general fund, the excess is negative 6.5 million.
I'm asking for our, so you're saying that we're 6.5? The last set was preliminaries, we had 9.4. So am I conflating two different reports? So for the last
I
year.
don't know what you saw last.
Okay.
So, but probably not. That's probably all accrual audit entries that have been made since you probably, again, don't know, but you probably got the, what we call the cash basis or the,
Right.
our accounting basis financial statements last, or that's what will be online. And these include audit accrual entries that wouldn't have been shown on those.
Okay. Thank you. And can you take just a moment and talk about depreciation, because that question has come up. And I just would appreciate you just reminding us how
Do you
that
want
functions.
the accounting 101 definition of depreciation,
That
or?
would be fine.
Okay, so depreciation as a concept is when an asset is bought that has a useful life over a year, and for the city's purposes, a value of over 10,000, but for, we do it at lower levels for IPL. That asset, when it is booked, it is then depreciated theoretically over the life of the asset. Lots of assets have predetermined useful lives, if you want to say that. So for GASB accounting purposes, we depreciate things pretty much the longest life is 40 or 50 years. Jim will probably tell you that there are things that have a longer life than that. So depreciation is just a way, accounting has a matching principle, which basically means you try to match your revenue with your expense in the same time period. And so it's really not fair to say, you know, we spent $3 million on this piece of equipment and that only affected year one. That's not accurate. That $3 million piece of equipment has value every year of its life, and that's what depreciation tries to accomplish, is spreading out that asset's cost and its value over its life.
And that depreciation is a standard accounting tool used by every industry, especially those that are asset heavy, like utilities.
Correct. Everybody, even home businesses.
And we recently moved over to FERC accounting.
FERC accounting has been done here for ever.
A long
Yeah, for a very long time. So to give some background, I guess, so when the city has done FERC accounting is a reporting basis. It's a Federal Energy Regulatory Commission basis of accounting, but they really use it for reporting in order to compare ABC utility to DEF utility. They want all the reports to make their lives easy. They want all the reports to come in uniform so that they can do that comparison. And so FERC accounting is literally just codes where they require things to be accounted for. It will tie in a different maybe account or way to your regular accounting records, but you have to put them in certain categories in order to report back to FERC. And we do that once a year. And those account codes are what we call project codes in our system of accounting. Munis, we have general ledger codes and we have project codes. And those are our FERC accounting codes that help us then later take our general ledger numbers, reconfigure them and put them into the FERC accounting report, if that explains that.
And that's standard across utilities, that people use the same FERC accounting approach?
Not all utilities are required to use FERC accounting, only utilities that transmit across state lines and are over a certain amount of production. I can't remember that.
I can answer that a little bit.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. It's a lot.
The one of the purposes of the FERC accounting is to divide up your expenses, your revenues based on asset class. So you'll have things in there for transmission. You'll have some that are distribution, some that'll be generation or production, some that are just administrative. But you have to divide those up for the FERC reporting because that's what they use when they determine how much to reimburse you for your transmission costs. The big topic here the last couple of years was what we call an ATRR. That's our annual transmission reimbursement. And several years ago, when we filed for it, we were using FERC accounting, and we have been using FERC accounting. However, there were some deficiencies in our process. We weren't capturing everything the way FERC wanted to see it, and so they didn't fine us. What they did was they reduced the amount that we requested. We requested like 7.2 million in reimbursements, and FERC approved 5. So we got shortchanged because we couldn't demonstrate that we had everything in the right categories per FERC's to satisfy FERC's judgment. We spent a lot of time over the last couple of years, a lot of folks getting training. We had people consultants coming in and help us to review that. And the improvement in our FERC, we didn't switch, but the improvement in our FERC accounting, when we went back this last year, we got the additional 2 million. So it's just an accounting process. It's buckets that you dump your dollars into that, as she said, it's so you can compare it across utilities. And those that are involved in that transmission wheeling, that's where that money comes from.
I know that was one of your organizational goals, was to shore that up.
Correct.
So I appreciate getting a report out on that. Thank
And
you.
the transmission wheeling, I believe SPP does that on a quarterly basis. So we're probably going to see here in the next month or so, you'll probably see an addition in that category.
Any other questions? Hearing none. Is that all on the financial reports? We want to talk about the water or municipal services? Do you have a question?
I do have some questions. This is for the water department. Since the water level of the Missouri River has dropped so low, I actually read it from somebody who posted online. They thought their water tasted more like chlorine than usual. And I'm thinking, our water's a lot lower than the river, so that wouldn't affect our water. Is there any reason why someone would have a chlorine smell in their water?
No, because we actually add ammonia to it, which ties up the chlorine smell. So it's chloramine disinfection. So usually it's something like if somebody's cleaning their sink or something and they'll pick up on a smell, but rarely would, if somebody tasted chlorine or smelled chlorine in the water, that's just not our water. So.
Okay.
But as far as, I think the question last, right, Ms. McCandless had asked about, just the dry weather and the aquifer, and that does have an effect on the wells and how we draw down when we turn a well on and the river's down, which helps recharge the aquifer. But when that happens, it just means that we can pump less water from those particular wells during when the river is down or but the aquifer is, we have such an abundant aquifer, we either turn on more wells, or if we need more wells, we could add wells in order to meet the demand. But you're talking about apples and oranges, so the dryness and all that, that water coming out of the ground has no chlorine in it.
Correct.
So what we're doing is softening at the plant, and when we add the chloramine disinfection, the average person can't smell or taste. That's one of the beauties of our water. You just don't have that happen. If there is, then it's something we're not doing correctly, but that's just not something that I would have heard of.
I can tell you on that post that was listed, I believe, on a social network called Neighborhood, there was about 50 comments to the person's comment, and everybody touted how good our water was.
Thank you. We usually don't respond to those social comments, because then it could be a bill or somebody's bill or their concern, and usually we know the answer, but we're certainly not going to go out and share with them on a particular person how they might respond. But so in most cases, we have favorable reviews, and but we will go out on a customer complaint and look at those individually. If somebody calls us up and asks us to go out, we'll be glad to do that. And 99.9% of the time, it's somebody that has put on a softener or something special onto their system and never changed the filter in it since the day that they installed it. But that's just me talking off the top of my head. But rarely, I can't remember. You ever remember where somebody had an actual legitimate water quality complaint? That Matt's our deputy director.
We can have certain times of the year, if you've got like a dead end main, we put them on a flushing routine where we'll keep the water turned over if there's just a few services on that main. Sometimes it gets ahead of us, maybe, and the quality's not where we like it. They might notice a little bit of odor or taste, so they call us, we go out, we take a flush a hydrant at the end of the line and keep that water turned over for them. But that's typically the types of issues that we'll have. But again, said, we'll be glad if you've got a problem or a question, call us, we'll come out. If you want us to sample water, we can take it back to our lab and do that analysis for you.
And on a dead end like that, if there was an issue, it wouldn't be because there's too much chlorine. It's because it was, just stale water that's been there so long that the chlorine would have dissipated. If there was anything to burn up chlorine, but that would be just the opposite of what you're saying. If you have a taste and odor of chlorine, that's a rare commodity.
I just brought that up because I read that this past week.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I've got some more.
Well,
Not for the water department.
well, does municipal services have any reports? You don't, do you?
Just one quick one. I'm not sure if Lisa shared this last time. If Lisa shared this with you last time, but our biosolids project, it's been on hold for the last couple of years. Did she share that last time that we received the equipment finally? And now we're sprinting to get done by early spring. So hopefully we'll be up and running by then, and we can start land applying our biosolids instead of land filling.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any questions for municipal services? Hearing none. Okay, water, do you have anything?
I just try to bring something forward just to have something to talk about, And one of the things that the council had approved, what we call a best professional judgment study for the water plant sludge discharge. I might have talked about it before, but I can't remember, and thought I would just share it with you and just kind of give you an update. The Missouri Department of Natural Resources Water Protection Program contacted us about an application for renewal of Missouri State Operating Permit to discharge water treatment residuals to the Missouri River. We call that our NPDES permit, where we discharge. I think Rock Creek would have it. Everybody that's discharges to the Missouri River will have these. So the EPA has not promulgated federal effluent guidelines applicable to the water industry. Therefore, when effluent guidelines have not been promulgated for a specific type of category or discharge, technology-based limitations must be imposed on a case-by-case basis using best professional judgment. They call it a BPJ for the acronym that they use. And so we've entered in a contract with engineering firm of CMT Crawford Murphy Telly is the name of, in collaboration with against geosynthetic to perform this study and make recommendations by April of 2023. We chose them because they've done these for all the major utilities along the Missouri River, and we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. So that's the reason why we selected these folks. So they've done it for all the large utilities, and what they've been doing is going to the largest one first, and they've made it down to independents. We're not the smallest, but we're not the largest. So I guess the good news in that regard is that somebody's had some experience in dealing with these folks. So, and in the past, what most of them that we've seen, what they'll end up doing is do the study, and the conclusion is that they'll allow us to discharge, or the other big utilities that like St. Louis County, City of St. Louis, Kansas City, they're all continuing to discharge to the Missouri River. It's a 30 milligram per liter stream, so they can dump the sludge into it, because what we're putting in is actually cleaner than the Missouri River. But what they will more than likely have us do is, instead of just discharging on the banks of the Missouri River, we're probably going to have a pipe out underneath the Missouri River, so you just won't see it. You'll never see, like if you did an aerial view of the Missouri River at our location, you would see sludge going into the river, or you'd see a yellow color or something that would cause you to say you're discharging something there. But the fact that it's cleaner than what the river water is probably where this is going to go. But we're spending $98,000 to have this company come in and tell us what we need to do, and we're surmising what the result will be based on past practice of other utilities. So right now, where they are, they've asked us for 10 years background information and to test our outfall sludge to the Missouri River twice a week. Once we get this information, we'll bring this back to the Department of Natural Resources in a report, and we'll go forward. But one of the long-term, this is not going to be cheap. No matter what we do, if they told us to take everything and land apply it, or if they tell us to go to the Missouri River with the sludge, regardless of what the case may be, there will be costs associated with that. So sometime down the road, we'll get a report, and we'll come forward to you with how we will handle this sludge discharge. We're hoping that it will be the less costly. The least costly would be what everybody else has done, which is continue to discharge, but it'll be submerged and you just won't see it. So anyway, I thought I would at least bring you an update as to where we are and where this is going, and somewhere down the road, that's where we'll be. So
What was the name of that company again?
the company we're using is Crawford Murphy Tilley, CMT, but the geosynthetic, can you say that word? Geosyntec, GEOSYNTEC, is the company that's done every one of them along the Missouri River for the reports that we know of.
Okay. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman? Two questions for you, Mr. Montgomery. The first one is, could you just take a moment to outline the question that I had, which was, why do people getting wholesale water get that at a lower rate than Independence residents? There's a perfectly logical explanation, but I'd love for you to just review that.
Okay, she had reached out to me. We ran into each other at an event, and she mentioned it to me, and I said I would just get back with her on Monday after that. The question normally comes up as to how can you sell, if you go out and look at the rates for the wholesalers, we charge them less than we charge, say, a residential customer on a commodity per gallon, or if you wanted to say it in our case, per 100 cubic feet. And so the logic of that is that when we sell wholesale, we don't have 650 miles of main that we're having to maintain. We don't have hydrants that we have to maintain. We don't have billing. We have one bill that's going to City of Lee Summit for 7.5 million gallons of water a day. We're sending them one bill a month for one customer. So we don't have all those customers that they would have to bill, the collections process, the meter reading, all the various things that would be associated with that. And the other thing is that when years ago, 1986, the city bought the Missouri Water Company they bought the Missouri Water Company. And in that process, we wholesaled half of our water to these wholesale customers. they all took the liberty to say, we're not going to let you buy us if you're not going to enter into an agreement. Because if independents had just bought it and said, now we're going to just do whatever we want with you, then they would have had no control or negotiating possibility. So what happens is they put language in all the wholesale contracts that said that every time we do a cost of service study, unlike when Jim does it, we have to have a specific method. It says in all the contracts, American Water Works Association, M1 manual, a certain method, and done this particular way. And if it's done, once it's done and they present the cost, it's the true cost of whatever it costs to serve those wholesale customers. If they don't like the results of that, they can take it to a judge and have an arbitration, turn that over. And so what we've done ever since 1986, whenever we increase the rates to the wholesale customers, we do a study, and it has to be done by, it specifically says, Black and Beach, Burns McDonnell, or a comparable type person who, outside engineering firm that does these kind of studies and does it in a manner that follows this AWWA manual. So it's very specific, and I guess the good news is that that's what we use too when we do these cost of service studies. And then once the results are come in, there's no council, nobody else is going to be able to say that we're not going to charge. We're going to charge the wholesalers more. You can try that, but they'll take it to a judge and they'll overturn that. Or if we can't even, we don't, if it says the commercial needs to be this amount. If the industrial, we have an industrial customers, industrial has to be this amount. Or if it's the wholesalers, whoever the customer is, we charge them exactly what comes out of this result of this study. So in the long range, it's been beneficial to us, because when I say that we have a true cost of service study, I believe that it is, because it has no input from, I mean, we have input and giving them the information, finance does that type of thing, but we can't steer it and say, we want to subsidize the residential customers, or we want to subsidize the wholesalers, or that wouldn't happen. But anyway, that is how it's done. And so the answer I gave to you was in a written form, and I think I kind of summarized it.
So the long and the short of it is, if Lee Summit buys our water, they still have to bear all the cost of their own storage, distribution, and billing. And so they put those costs on the other end for their end user. And so that's why it looks different. So
Yes, absolutely. And I'll add one more thing. I think I included that. You jarred my memory. I checked because somebody made a comment that we do have one wholesaler, the city of Sugar Creek, who actually sells their water cheaper to their customers than we sell it to ours. So I can't answer, but the rest of all the other wholesalers, their cost to their individual residential customers exceeds what our customers are paying. We actually do a survey at budget time just to see how we compare with everybody else, and we're usually on the lower end of, well, I think there must have been 30 a month, I think, when I sent it to you.
Thank you. My second question is, we've had a bunch of water main breaks, and I know that we have used ductile iron with polywrap has been what Independence uses. Does that still make sense when you're going to have increasing issues with heat and dryness and shifting land? Because, please, what I know is little, but my understanding is that is more likely to break under those strains than some of the plastic polymers that other municipalities are using. So I'm asking.
I guess I would dispute that. Matt just happens to be an ex-distribution manager, so I'm gonna let him handle this question just out of curiosity of what he's going to say. But
Typically, the ductile iron is more resilient in the settlement, like what we're having right now with the dryness, the clay that's present in the soils in this area of the country. You have a lot more expansion and contraction when it's drier or wetter, times. So that actually wreaks havoc on those pipes that are buried in the ground and are getting shifted around as well. The mains that are breaking are actually the older, say the 50s or 60s vintage cast iron. Cast is much more brittle. It's harder, but it's more brittle than the ductile iron, what we currently use now. Ductile is, as it says, it's ductile. It'll move, it'll bend before it breaks, where the old cast iron was brittle and it'll pop, it'll snap. We call it a centrifugal break, a circle break is what we call it. You can see when you dig them up, it looks like somebody took a saw and just cut it. They literally just pop and shift. So that's the mains that break when you have that ground shifting more. We're not putting that pipe in anymore. We've gone to ductile iron, which is more resilient and in that type of conditions, if you will. So
Okay.
as far as ductile versus plastic or PVC or HDPE, I would probably tend to lead towards ductile being more resilient, but there's an argument for both.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just our choice that we've stayed with a metallic system. Everything's iron or ductile iron or cast iron. So, but
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Any other questions? Hearing none. IPL, do you have anything?
I do. I have a couple things I'd like to report back to you. Some good things. One, we did send a crew down to Florida for the hurricane relief effort. I think there were 10 or 12 Missouri utilities that went down together in PUA, put that crew together. They were greatly appreciated. They did fantastic work. And after a couple of days of hard work, they got released and sent back because within like 3 or 4 days, they had 95% of the Orlando area back in power. So our folks do a good job out there. It's recognized, and they were even in some of the Florida Power and Light videos. You could spot our guys out there working. So that went very well. Our E to F project, that's the main distribution and transmission line that goes up and down the west side of Independence between substations E and F. That's probably our biggest project this year, and the bids have been awarded, and we're assembling the materials and getting that work started. And this is the final phase of that construction. Several weeks ago, there was a car that had a high-speed collision with one of our poles on 35th Street. Just happened to be the next pole that was due to be replaced. So we got an early start on that project. Transformer supply issues continue to be an issue. It's nationwide. The American Public Power Association and MPUA here locally are all on that, talking to legislators, talking to the Department of Energy, trying to see what they can do to possibly ease some standards and allow for some faster manufacturing. Some of the Inflation Reduction Act money, they're trying to get some of that pushed to our local manufacturers, U.S. manufacturers, to help speed that up. We are not alone. Utilities all across the country have suspended new construction and expansions in order to reserve what transformers we do have for emergencies. We'd hate to give a transformer to an empty, unmanned new neighborhood and then have a neighborhood go out and not have one to bring them back. So we're managing that. I have been in contact with the city's emergency management group so that they're aware of what we're doing, and our staff are working hard on contingency plans to make sure that if we do have a transformer that we are out of, that we have already thought of some alternatives, whether that's splitting some circuits, changing to a different size, whatever we can do to help bring those customers back online. Unfortunately, there's no end in sight to that problem yet. Manufacturers are still behind on their production levels. Foreign producers that we've relied on a lot are in the same shape. Their production is way behind, and people are getting 100-week and longer delivery dates to get some of these materials. The final note, streetlights. You may hear from some constituents about streetlights being out for extended periods. We did have a problem where one of our communication companies was doing some boring at a number of different locations and hit our lines. Rather than dig up an entire neighborhood trying to find where the break is, we were able to get a piece of equipment that will help us walk that line and try to identify the break, dig that spot up and do a splice or a repair. And we have crews that have started doing those repairs now. So hopefully, now that's not going to fix the ones where the light fixture is bad and we don't have the parts to replace, but at least the ones that are out because of a power issue, they should start seeing those back online here soon.
Okay. Any questions?
Does the company have to pay for those since they caused the disruption?
We work that out with the city's risk management group. We send them all those costs, and then we let them handle it from there.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I've got a question. When it comes to our rates for residential and commercial rates, does this board, do we look at that first, or is that a city council issue?
We will certainly, now the change that got done a couple of years ago, that was initiated by the council and passed by the council. So you did not see that first. Neither did I. If we propose a change, we will certainly bring that to the PUAB and discuss that with you.
I'm trying to remember when it was, but there was a rate schedule that we updated 2 years ago. And we brought that to this board first before it went to the city council for approval, if I remember right.
Right, the new rates,
Yeah.
there was a project underway to overhaul our rates, simplify our rates, and that package, absolutely, that was discussed several times with the board prior to being presented to council.
My memory's not as good as it used to be. That's why I'm asking.
Any other questions?
One last one. Jim, would it be wrong for us to reopen that generation project that you guys wanted to do down at Blue Valley?
Would it be wrong?
Would it be wrong?
It's certainly in your purview to ask those questions. I will tell you, we have been in contact with a group that is a battery manufacturer. We've been in contact with the same company that proposed the package that we put forward at the beginning of the year, as well as some others. I don't have a renewed or refreshed quote to discuss with you. So right now we can talk concepts, but I don't have any numbers any firm numbers that I could go over with you quite at this point.
Would it be wrong to ask for a renewed quote?
I've already done that.
Okay. And we're still waiting?
We're still waiting. Yes.
100 weeks?
Oh, no.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
And when you get that quote, is it possible to find out the pricing for a single CT? I know they quoted us a price for 2 refurbished, but could we understand what it would be? I'm sure it's more, it's not just half when they come into a single. I'd appreciate that.
We can certainly include that in our request.
Thank you.
Anything else? Hearing none. Let's see. Deputy City Manager, do you have anything?
No report, thanks.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I forgot one question. Mr. Nail, you sent me information that I had requested at the past meeting about kind of 10-year looks at income for the utility. And is there going to come a point where we discuss that here?
We certainly can.
Okay. For the next meeting, it was, without the assumptions, it was impossible for me to understand the graphs. Because there were clearly some assumptions built into there with some rate adjustments. And I need to understand also what you anticipate for inflationary pressures and
Sure.
how that will affect the bottom line for the utility.
Yeah, that graph, I think it had been presented once before, but that graph was part of a financial study that was done for us by Burns and McDonnell, and the graph is produced by a linked chain of about 18 different spreadsheets. So there's a lot of different variables, a lot of things that are built into that. It's pretty comprehensive. So we'll be happy to go over that with you at a future meeting.
Any other questions? Hearing none. Upcoming items, IPL development of future generation, and finance and administration going over the details of the financials. That brings us to board member comments. Any board members have anything to say?
I was looking online, and this chart got posted about the Kansas City Mavericks down at the event center, and I just wanted to find out. It's talking about sponsorship. Can you kind of explain that? What the money's going for that sponsorship?
Ever since the Mavericks came to Independence, one of the sponsors has been Power and Light, and it's really sort of part of our community outreach, establishing goodwill with the community, and we get some free advertising. Well, it's not free because we pay a sponsorship, but, we get some advertising based on that. So it's basically just a business practice like a number of other companies do.
So, as in advertising, so is that just to let everybody know what their utility company, who their utility company is, since we're the only one in town, or what is that?
More just an awareness that we are here sponsoring, that we are here supporting the community.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else?
Actually, one more. I know that this has already come up and been kind of put to bed, but it came up again in the 26th study session. And so my curiosity about this is why, if we're not looking at selling IPL again, why is it seems to keep coming up, and it came up from the council members on the 26th. So I'm trying to kind of see where that's going, and why they would be asking for, what's the harm in looking into it, treating it like an asset, what it would be if it were to be sold, and so on. And again, it keeps coming up, and that's the only reason I'm asking right now.
So if memory serves, that was during the presentation from loggers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. I can't answer for the city council. So I think that's a question you could ask one of the members, whoever asked that question.
Okay.
So I can't speak for them. That would be improper for me to do that.
Right.
But I can tell you that we're not involved in any conversation about selling IPO
Okay.
from a staff perspective. And we haven't been given any policy direction on that either.
Okay.
So
Well, and my big concern is because anybody I run into that I discuss utilities with, it's like, man, if a city's got their own utilities, you keep it. And I'm starting to find articles now that are, and I'm only saying this because I want to get this out, that I'm seeing articles come up now that utilities that have sold to a private company, a lot of them are trying to get them back because they've lost control over, they can't, all the utility, once it's sold, then all of a sudden people's rates go up, and then the city has no control over that. So that's my big concern, because again, we're supposed to be here for the ratepayers, and I just want to make sure that I at least got my concerns out. So,
Anybody else?
We're over here looking at the figures at 10:55 this morning. 61% of the energy generated for Southwest Power Pool, wind. And that's for all those people out there that think wind doesn't work.
All right.
SPP puts out a daily assessment of projecting forward, and it bottoms out the next couple of days here. So you should see a couple of days here where the percentages are going to swing, and that's just what wind does.
Jim, I've got one here from September 15th, because I look at this all the time. It was 49%. I mean, I know that it doesn't blow all the time, but when it does, it generates a lot of electricity.
Yes, sir.
All right. Any other comments? Hearing none. Our next meeting will be November 17th. And with that, I guess we're adjourned.